Hey students, this is lesson 27, or actually day 27. We're going to be modeling with functions. The goal we have for today, the objective is that you will be able to interpret functions using function notation and solve problems involving functions. So I want you to take a moment, please write down the objective and then also the date, or the title here. That would be great. Okay, so big idea here is that we're going to be looking at stories, we're going to be making functions, just like the other lesson, the last lesson we talked about how to input variables. Now we're going to talk about how those apply in real life. So big idea, remember, is the function machine. Right? If I had a function machine and put ingredients into it, I should only get one output, not two. If there's two outputs, then it doesn't function correctly. So, one output, I'm talking about that. Again, here are the steps. Take a moment, please write these steps down and pause the video right now. Okay, you should have paused the video and written these down. Here we go. Continuing. So vocabulary here. We have independent variable. Now the independent variable is the input of a function, and usually we call this x, or whatever variable it is. The dependent variable is the output of the function. We usually call this y. The y depends on what x is doing. So if x changes, it kind of changes. It always changes y. Another way we call y is f of x. We've talked about that. Okay, which is the function notation. So it's a good way to think of these problems is start with what is depending on the other thing. What changes? Okay, or what's the goal? So for example, let's say you want to figure out how many, if a student is working at a restaurant, how much money does the student make? If you know they make $8 per hour, well, you would have to figure out, well, the goal is how much does the student make, right? That's the dependent variable. What does how much the student makes depend on? Well, it depends on how long the student works. Okay? And then function rule is an algebraic expression that defines a function. So you could take a moment to read through these. You don't have to write them down, but just know that they will be there. We'll be talking about them. Okay? So we're going to be talking about independent and dependent. So over here we got three words that are independent, and then we got three words that are dependent. So take a moment, read through these, and notice the differences. Okay, so independent, right? You're by yourself, you're not depending on other things, nothing will ever change. Dependent means you're depending on something else. So, yeah. Pretty straightforward. I'm not going to spend too much time here, but you need to understand the differences in order to be successful in this lesson. Okay, I'll show you how to do numbers 1 and 2. So Kate earns, here we're going to start over here on the top left. Kate earns $7.50 per hour. How much money will she earn after working 8 hours? So we want to think about, what is Kate doing? Well, she's working, and she's making money per hour, and we're trying to figure out how much does she make at the very end. So her independent variable is really how many hours she works. Right? We don't know how many hours she works, but how many hours she works doesn't get affected by her total pay. So we would put that down as her independent variable. The dependent variable is how much money she gets at the end, right? So she could get a lot or less depending on how many hours she works. So I would write the dependent variable is how much total money she gets. Okay, so if we know that, then we know that this is our independent would be our x, and the dependent would be our y. Okay, continuing on function notation, we got y is equal to her $750x, and instead of y, we're going to write f of x. Okay, so again, the total money. I'll show you what I just did here. we made an equation. The total money she gets will be equal to how much she gets paid per hour times how many hours she works. Okay. Instead of using y, let's use function notation, f of x. Okay. Standard notation would then be y is equal to 750 times x. In this case, let's put in 8, and then we're going to solve for it. So f of 8 is going to be equal to 750 times 8. Plug it in. 750 times 8 is $60. So f of 8 is $60. Now we've just taken a math problem, like a word problem. We made it turn it into math. Then we have to take the answer and put it back into a word problem. So what does that mean? Well, let's talk about it. Okay, so let's read the question again. How much money will she earn after working 8 hours? Well, we just write a complete sentence answer. Kate earns $60 after working 8 hours, okay? And that's it. Alright, so that's number 1, okay? That's number 1. Number 2 now. Let's look up here. Manuel, we're looking right up here. Manuel has already sold $20 worth of tickets to the school play. He has 4 tickets left to sell at $2.50 per ticket. What is the total amount collected from ticket sales? So again, I'm trying to figure out what's the goal here. So the goal here is I'm trying to find the total amount collected from ticket sales. So that's, the total amount that's collected, if you think about it, depends on how many he sells, right? So the total amount should be our dependent variable. So I would write on the dependent variable would be the total money he gets, okay? On the independent variable would be how many tickets he sold. So I would write something like how many tickets he sold, or right here I'm writing amount of tickets he sells. Okay? So now we start with function notation down here. So function notation, we're going to start with f of x. And remember, that's our dependent variable. So it could be f of x or y could be your dependent variable. So what's that? F of x is equal to $20. He already has $20, right? And he's going to sell tickets at $2.50 each. We don't know how many he's going to sell. The question is asking for 4, but we need to set up an equation. So this function represents that, right? We're saying that he already has $20 and that he's going to sell tickets for $2.50 each and we don't know how many because we're going to multiply that x in there. Okay? So the standard notation, here we go. Standard notation, we're going to put y is equal to 20 plus 250 times x. In this case, we're using 4. And then we're going to solve. F of 4 is equal to 250, or 20 plus 250 times 4. 250 times 4 is $10, right? And then 20 plus 10 is 30, okay? So that's how you do numbers 1 and 2. We definitely want to write a complete sentence answer number 2. So the question was, what is the total amount collected from ticket sales? We would write the total amount collected from ticket sales was $30. Okay? So that's number 1. Or no, 1 and 2. So please pause the video and write this down. Okay, number 3. Almira earns $50 an hour. How much does she earn in 6 hours? Okay, so here we go. Think about what is her dependent variable. What are we trying to figure out? Right? We're trying to figure out how much she earns in 6 hours, or it could be in any amount of hours. We could say 10 hours or 5 hours, 1 hour, or 100 hours. It could vary, right? But that's the dependent variable. How much she gets depends on how much she works, right? Okay, so let's start with the dependent variable. What is dependent on the other? It's how much she actually gets. Oh, sorry about that. So we're going to write down the total amount she gets again. Okay, the independent variable would be how many hours she works, right? Okay, so then this is our x and this is our y, right? Our y I also think of as f of x. It's the same thing. So function notation, we're going to start with f of x is equal to, well, she has $50 per hour, and so it's going to be 50 times x. Standard notation is going to be y is equal to 50 times x. So now we're going to solve. We're asking ourselves, Well, how much does she make in 6 hours? So we're going to start with this f of 6. We're going to plug it into our original function that we just wrote, 50 times 6, and then we know 50 times 6 is 300. So now we'd write a complete sentence answer. How much does she earn in 6 hours? Well, we would say Amira earns $300 in 6 hours. Okay? Continuing onward. Let's do this one. A telephone company charges 25 cents per minute for the first 5 minutes plus a call, 45 cents connection fee per call. What is the total cost of dollars? I'm going to ask you to pause the video here. Please try this one out on your own. Identify the independent variable. Remember, that's your x. Your dependent variable is your y, so we'd say that or f of x. And then function notation, or you need to write something that starts with f of x is equal to something. Okay, and then standard notation is y is equal to something and solve it. Okay, so please pause the video here, work this out by yourself in your notes. Okay, you should have worked this out. So on this one I'm thinking, what is dependent on the other? I know that that how much she's going to spend in dollars for making a call is going to be dependent on how many minutes she uses, right? So if she spends a lot of time talking on the phone, she's going to actually spend more money, right? So her dependent variable, I would write the following: the total cost in dollars. Okay. The independent variable would be how long she talked, right? Okay, so that's our f of x and our y. I'm sorry, I wrote these backwards. This is our x and this is our y. Now we're going to write function notation. We know that when you make a call, so the total money making a call would be the cost, the initial cost, the connection fee of 45 cents plus the 25 cents per call or per minute, which is x. X would represent the minutes. Then we're going to put in standard notation, y is equal to 45 plus 250x. So we're going to solve now for f of 5. F of 5 means how long would it cost for 5 minutes? So I'm working this problem out. 45 cents plus $1.25, and then we get f of 5 is equal to $1.70. Okay, so check your work. That's the last one. That will conclude the lesson. Before we finish, I'd like you to think through these questions. What did we learn? How do we do that? What is the difference between the independent and dependent variable? Super important you understand that. And again, how do you use this in real life? We use them, all the examples were real life examples. So take a moment, think about that. Super important that you do this because it helps you remember and retain what you've learned. Okay? And then I'd like you to do page 21 in your workbooks, okay? Just practice. Please do that before we move on to anything else. Alright, thank you so much. Bye-bye.